Welcome to the No Shame Podcast. I'm John Groders. Once a year, filmmakers and producers, actors and directors from all over the world gather to be encouraged in the Lord and in their craft at the International Christian Visual Media Conference, or ICVM. We spent the week interviewing many of those who attended for our podcast.
Have no shame, no, we are not afraid, no shame of the gospel of his name. It's the power of God by which we are saved. We need not be afraid. No shame.
It's John Groders. We're on the No Shame Podcast here at the ICVM. We're on day 4. We have a gathering here this year. It's in Nashville area near Franklin, and we have writers and actors and producers and directors and all kinds of people, and we've been talking to all of them, but Catherine Clinch is with us today, and you are a writer, but you also teach writing, and you've actually taught me a little bit about writing, and you know, it's just nice and of you to care enough about writing to not just do it yourself, but to cattle prod the rest of us to improve our writing. How can you help us?
Well, I'm particularly interested in the Christian market because I think you all need to up your game. I think there's a lot of lessons that can be taken from the secular market, and there's a lot of things we know in Hollywood that I think if you guys learned those, then you could make better content. Because too often you're preaching to the choir, and you shouldn't be preaching at all. It's entertainment. So I would really like to see better movies because, you know, you're vamping on the greatest story ever told. Don't mess it up.
I've often said the only preaching in a movie should be if there's a preacher in the movie.
There you go.
Should the characters reflect the voice of the author, or how do you talk about that?
The way that you determine who your protagonist is the first thing you do is determine who you want to reach, who's your target audience. And once you define that, then your protagonist should be just like that target audience, so they can see themselves in the movie. And the journey that they go on should take them through the experiences you want to portray. So it really is a matter of stopping saying, people will throw out random ideas. Well, what about this and a this? Or what if the guy is this and he's reincarnated somebody? You know, it's just, you've got to be plausible, and there's got to be a reason for everything you do.
I'm a writer. I like to write. And when you say make your protagonist who you're trying to reach, is that why we need to not always and only write superhero movies?
Well, I like superhero movies. I pretty much have seen them all because I have 3 sons and a husband who like superhero movies. And I enjoy them because there's a very definite predictability about them. And they're always about truth, justice, and the American way. Overcoming obstacles, facing challenges, camaraderie with the other superheroes, and doing the right thing in the face of insurmountable adversity. And there's an emotional connection because, you know, we care when Superman is thrown up in the stratosphere and it's, oh no, he's knocked out. Is he going to? Oh, there he is. Okay. And we feel that sense of rooting for them. I think that in a lot of ways, there are elements of superhero stories in religious stories. Because, I mean, basically Jesus is the first rock star superhero. And so he can walk on water. Well, that's Aquaman. You know, there are roots of Jesus in so many stories. One of the things I like to point out is that in the story of the resurrection of Jesus, you have vampires and Frankenstein and zombies. All of those have secularized from the idea of Christ has died, Christ is risen, Christ will come again. Now, I'm not trying to be sacrilegious. I'm saying this is our oral tradition of stories. And so, yes, they make it extreme and dark and everything else. But we can't keep telling the same stories about Jesus. It's like we've all heard them. So,
Star Wars, on the other hand, no.
Star Wars will go on forever. It was interesting because the head of Disney once said, anyone alive today will never see the last Star Wars movie. Because you have infinite possibilities.
The universe is my oyster.
Yeah.
When people go to a movie, you're a writer, you talk to writers, we're very interested in writing good screenplays. We all know that before anything comes the screenplay. But talk about, for maybe people that might listen to a podcast that don't know a lot about screenplay writing. Like, I mean, I don't want to insult anybody listening to us, but this is a very, very basic question, but how important is a screenplay to a good movie?
The screenplay is essentially important because without the screenplay, first of all, if there's no screenplay, it's improv, and improv is hit and miss. At best, you're going to get a 50% hit ratio. A screenplay is the foundation of everything else. If you're going to put a lot of money into a film, then you really need a solid foundation to build on. You have your character relationships. You have your plot lines. Every character has their own plot line. So as we go through, they may only be in 5 scenes. What are they doing when they're not in there? You have to think of these things. With the character development and the relationships and the through lines of that, you also have what time of year it is. What year is it? There's a calendar involved. So if you're telling a story that takes place in 1964 in New York City, you've got the World's Fair going on. You need to reference that. It needs to be part of the atmosphere of what you're talking about. You also have the personal calendar. What do people typically do? If you have a mom and you have a scene starting at 8 o'clock, where are the kids? Are they on their way to school? Is she in the carpool? Have the kids not gotten up yet? There is something going on that has to be addressed in the course of everything else being taken care of.
Screenplay teachers like Catherine Clinch, who's with us on the No Shame podcast, they will teach us a variety of things. First, they'll teach us about genre. What is genre? Why is it important not to think you're going to invent a new one? What is structure? How do you want to structure your 3 acts? You'll teach us about dialogue. You'll teach us about character throughways. You'll teach us about denouement. You'll teach us about midpoint. And then you go to the movies yourself and you sit there, especially maybe, like you said, some of ours in this, and you go, what strikes you when they're talking on the screen and it doesn't sound like people talking, it sounds like somebody writing? Or what's going through your head when you say raise your game? Because I want to hear what maybe we won't have to particularly name who we're talking about, but what are the things that bug you?
Predictable dialogue.
Absolutely.
And corny dialogue. I will tell you, the funniest audience for a movie that wasn't intended to be funny was watching 50 Shades of Grey at the Writers Guild screening. Okay, because we were just all going wild, laughing at some of the comments. And that's definitely what you don't want to have. Genre, since you mentioned it, is a brand. People choose a movie the same way they choose food or anything else. It's like, do you feel like pizza or Chinese? What do you want? Do you want an action or a rom-com? And genre gives the level of predictability. We know that certain things are going to happen within it. And when you break genre, you better be darn good at what you're doing, because the story that happens in that broken genre has to be massively compelling. As far as foundation, everything has to be set up and paid off. Everything has to have a sense of through line and plausibility. Okay? People tend to go for extremes when they want to do something, well, it hasn't been done if this guy is that. Possibly the reason it hasn't been done is because it's not plausible or it's not well advised. I don't like movies where the kids have to be the adults. And for a very long time, I had a personal thing about dead mommies. Every family film your kid sees, by the time they're 10, the mother's dead, or she's so dysfunctional she might as well not be there, or worst yet, the mother has left the family to go self-actualize and everything's falling apart because dad can't cope. No more dead mommies. People say, well, then there's too many people there and it gets complicated. No, you can put a mother in any scene, and it's just bad writing if you can't figure out how to do it interestingly enough.
I saw a film, and I won't name it, but the writer was on a Q&A afterwards, and I don't want to be critical, but I thought the film was one long dangling participle. It just kept, it like ended and then kept going and then ended and it kept going, and I didn't know what it was about. I didn't know really who it was about. I really didn't know it, because it just felt so like everything thrown on the wall. We filmed all the scenes, and they tried to make us cry 12 times. And at the end, I wouldn't criticize publicly, but I'm thinking to myself, man, that was just a mess. And the writer answered a question and said, no, I've never actually taken a writing class. In fact, I've never even read a whole writing book. And we just produced a movie for a lot of money. Now, I hope I'm wrong, and maybe but I don't think I will be. I don't think you can hide or cover a good script with good photography.
You can take a mediocre script and shoot it well, and it's still not going to be a compelling story. You can take a great script and shoot it poorly, and there will probably still be something compelling. But here's the thing. Everybody wants to write. Everybody thinks it's easy. Not everybody should write. And some people should write and put it away in their drawer and then go write something else and have the experience of that. But the expectation of getting everything produced, you are held to a standard of everything else that's come before you. And so you have a responsibility not only to the audience, but to whoever is putting money in the film to get that money back with a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And also, I've always felt that, doctors have the Hippocratic Oath, first do no harm. That should hold in cinema too, because media has an incidental learning process going on. I'm going to take a wild guess. You probably haven't been arrested. If you have, you don't need to mention it. But I would bet that you know the Miranda ruling. Mm-hmm. You have a right to remain silent. Anything you say will be held against you in a court of law. And it just goes on, and people can recite it. And that's because you gradually become accustomed to certain things. After you've had 8 exposures to something, it's in your head forever. It's like an entire generation of millennials and Gen Zs have grown up knowing the 2 notes that signal law and order.
Yeah, right.
Bump, bump. It's just there. So you have a responsibility for what you're putting out into the universe. When I was writing episodes of TV, I always had a little prayer I would say. What am I supposed to say? I'm going to get to talk to 20 million people, 30 million people. Mm-hmm. What do I have to say to them? What do they need to know? So I would ask the provocative question. In Jake and the Fatman, who does the abused wife turn to when the abusive husband is a hero cop who took a bullet for his partner? That makes you stop and think. With the average TV show today, we're in what's called peak TV. Mm-hmm. I call it glut TV. Mm-hmm. There are not enough good writers to be writing all of these shows. And my husband likes science fiction, and sometimes we'll sit there and I'll say to him, we have heard that line 4 times already from 3 different characters. One of them is a little redundant. They said it twice. And he's like, I know, but look at the effects.
Right.
There was a show years ago that I don't want to name. My husband and I would watch it, really watch it, because I'd sit there going, this script is terrible, but it looks amazing. And it turned out that it was Bob Primes, who was a cinematographer. Bob is a dear friend of ours.
Oh, really? Yeah.
It was the first digitally shot show to get an Emmy. So you look at what draws you in. Sometimes it's the character. Sometimes it's, the stories are way over the top, but I like the girl. Sometimes it's an actor. There are certain things I will watch just because George Clooney is in them. Okay?
You and 100 million other people.
And as well we should,
But not many George Clooney movies are going to be poorly written, are they?
No.
They won't be. It's too expensive.
Not only is it too expensive, he has standards.
He will make sure that it's not poorly written.
He has the ability to do anything he chooses. But we should all have that same kind of standard. Here's the reality. If your movie is a hit in the features, you'll make $100 million if 10 million people see the movie. If a TV show is only seen by 10 million people, it's a flop. So You are asking people to go to great effort to watch your product. It ought to be spectacular.
It's just respectful.
Yes.
I had a script given to me this week, someone that's very seriously interested in us producing. I'd actually like your advice on this. And the person who gave it to me, it's not even written in a script format. It's not in final draft, kind of an early clue. And now this person has an idea, has a story that may have come from above, but never written for the work before. But, this person knows how to build houses. And I know that I don't know how to do blueprints. I could put a blueprint together and put a house up, maybe, but if a storm hit that house, I don't know anything about engineering, and that house would kill people.
Right.
How can I come alongside this brother who's given me this, and I'm sure you get these by the scans. I want to, if this is really a project that might one day get made, I've got a delicate task, or it might be not me, it might be another writer, in front of me to take an idea, but it now has to be turned into a legitimate screenplay. And that could be a painful process for this originator. How do you handle that?
Well, first of all, the reason that you can't copyright an idea, that you can only copyright the execution, is whatever that story is, you can put 30 professional writers in the room, and they're all going to write a different script on that same, set of circumstances and characters. But when you are looking at it, sometimes you just have to look at the script and say to the person, there's nothing here. You ought not write. Try directing, that's easier. I mean, seriously. Because when you're directing, you are working with something that exists, and you're bringing elements together. I have always said, and this is probably not going to go over well in Hollywood, but I've always said, if the director doesn't show up on a TV show, the crew will still give you a day's work. And it is the crew that does so much regularly. I'm hearing in the background all these little squeaking
Don't worry
doors.
about it. Yeah, we're live. This is in the hallway at ICVM, so all this energy around us.
I was thinking it's just like being in that horror movie where the door creaks.
That could be true. That is a squeaky door. Put some WD-40 on that door, would you? Wait, there's no crew here jumping to, oh baby, I guess we're not in a movie set.
It's also a screeching bird coming down to.
Yeah, we'll make do of it. If the writer doesn't show up on the day, though, the actors aren't going to say a word. I mean, the writer versus...
long before the actors are picked, the writer has, already finished the script. If not, the show's in trouble or the movie is in big trouble. It never does any good to be writing on the set if it's not a matter of, okay, we had to change locations, we lost the weather, then you have to make some adjustments. But if it's just like, yeah, we didn't get to finish that and we'll just kind of scotch tape it together, that's a bad situation.
Are there any... I heard you speak about a year ago, and at the end, I think you mentioned a very interesting project, and I don't want to bring it up if I'm not allowed to.
You're allowed.
Can we bring it up? Because
Yes.
the name's Stan Lee. I will just go ahead and throw that out there. It was a test, and he's written some things that have sort of caught on. How's that going?
It's going well. I just finished. I got a call about a year ago from a woman at one of the studios, and she said that Stan Lee's company had called her about a project, and she said she'd get involved if they let her bring me on. And so I met with them. They had a one-word title, and I said that was fascinating, and I understood immediately why they were bringing me in instead of somebody else. And I said, I think it's a very kind of limited thing. It could be, a limited kind of a series. But if you change it to these two words, it can be pretty much infinite and just sustain year after year. And they said, let's do that. So I built out the world. I've written a 36-page comic book. I have all the characters. All of that is done, all of the source art. And now we're getting ready to look at the artist. And the way that we're doing it is as a backdoor pilot. So they're going to print the first 8 pages of the comic book and distribute 500,000 copies for free to the target audience. At the end of the 8th page, it'll say, to find out what happens next, go online. And once you get online, you have the option of watching the whole thing again from scratch or from picking up on page 9. At the end of that, it'll say, share it with a friend. Now, you know how many of the 500,000 go online, how many of them stop at page 15, or how many go all the way through the end, and how many share it. That's how we determine whether or not it'll be a TV series.
This is animation, I'm presuming?
No.
Not animation.
No,
I'm
it's
wrong.
a comic book and it'll be live action.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it's with Stan Lee's POW Entertainment.
Excellent.
And then in the meantime, because I was suddenly going, I like comic book worlds. You have to create the world. You have to design you have to provide source art so that the artist knows when you said the building is this, it looks like the exact image you're presenting. Or you say it looks like this building, but it's slanted.
Right.
And whatever.
Create
And
some world for them.
you're basically directing the entire thing on paper, which is good because I'm the only person in Hollywood that doesn't want to direct TV or films. I don't like being on a set. So that kind of like pushes that away. So I had another idea, and a friend of mine said, I have a friend who does comic books like that, and you should reach out to them. I sent him what I had, and the next week he said, I want to do it. So I'm here this week. He's at Comic-Con next week, and then we're talking the week after about the deal.
Catherine Clinch is our guest. She has written television, episodic television for years, many series that you would have heard of, many series back when they got $20 and $30 million audiences. Now she's all the way moved into comics, and she's also teaching. A lot of people are writers and are serious enough at their craft. They want to be writers, and they might be writing their own fiction, they might be writing their own screenplays, and they contact you, and you help them. How do you help them?
Well, with writing now at this point, what I do for some people is, as a consultant, I dramaturge. If they have a pilot and they want to know, can this sustain for 5 years? I'll sit there and help break out where it can go over a 5-year arc. It doesn't mean that has to be the exact map, but it's the possibility of what may have the most potential for sustaining. And I show them, sometimes people have a script and they go, this is a lead, and I sit there going, no, actually, it's this character over here who's much more interesting, and if we see the story from their point of view, here's the direction it can go into. I occasionally read scripts and give notes. I really look at what does the person have before I take any money from them. If I'm working for a legitimate producer and they want the dramaturge thing, that's great. If I'm talking to someone who's new and young and is struggling to get the money, I don't want to take their money. And the reason I teach seminars like this at events like ICVM or National Religious Broadcasters is because this becomes my week of giving. I'm here for this entire week. I've been talking to people about their stories, about their projects, totally free, because I feel like I care about the Christian market and I want it to be elevated. The minute I get on the plane, I'm $250 an hour. So I tell them, take advantage of me. I am here. You want to talk about that? Let's. We're going into lunch. Come sit with me.
You can make $1,000 before you land in L.A. It'll be great if someone sits next to you and picks your brain. It is beautiful. It's one of the things I love about ICVM. You might get to run into Catherine here, and she can help all of us. You helped me, and I'll pick your brain even more. But you also want to write your own stuff. You're still a creative writer. So what do you want to write about when it's just your story?
I always look at what do I think is going on in the world, and how can what I write illuminate that so that people can understand themselves and the world around them a bit better. I will use the F word, feminist, and I write strong women, but I write strong men. I really dislike it when scripts emasculate the male characters. I like action-adventure. So one of the things that I keep dusting off is like a Girls Die Hard. Woman Marine in the Mall of America, terrorists take over. They get Mom because she kicked Mom out of the dressing room. And the only people she has to help her save the world are the assistant head of security and a mall rat who didn't know what was going on because she was in the bathroom with earbuds, trying on what she had shoplifted, figuring out what she needs to go back to shoplift to complete the ensemble. And these three unlikely people come together, and each of them has a character arc with a turnaround. And at the end, all's well that ends well. And instead of having the typical terrorists, they're domestic terrorists. So I look in terms of it's a predictable genre. The Die Hard movies just keep doing better and better and better, but no one yet has done a girls' Die Hard. And I think it's about time because little girls need to be able to see that they can be action-adventure heroes as well.
I like that. Laura Croft meets Paul Blart. See it tonight. I love it.
No,
I got it wrong?
No, more like, no, let's just leave it at Woman Marine in the Mall of
I
America.
guess I should let you describe your own. Does Hollywood still buy scripts?
They really don't. Everyone talks about spec scripts. If you're not on the A list, they're not buying your spec, but specs get you attention. The true way that we are all starting to talk, and when I say all, the people that I know, we're starting to talk about the value of writing first as a novel, getting a publisher, and then pushing that as the basis for a film, because everybody is buying books. For some reason, they feel like it's better. Somebody's been vetted already. And I think that's kind of insecure, but if that's what's happening right now, that's what you have to do. The other issue about that is that there is no longer a stigma about self-publishing. I have a friend who sold 350,000 copies of a book through self-publishing.
Excellent.
And that kept her and her family going for a number of years.
Excellent.
I think that also news articles and journalism is a great source of stories for the movies. But to sit down and write a spec script, nobody really wants to read them. I'm not a believer in competitions. I think the people who run the contests make a fortune. And I have yet to see people come out of there and go, I got a great big career because I won this contest. The only exception is the Nichols. That's very, very respectable. And so that gets a lot of response from agents and managers. The other thing is that I think that when you're reading a book or taking a class, you have to be very careful and do a little research. Has the person writing the book ever actually written a movie that was purchased and made? Because I've got 18 produced credits, and I go through a very definite left brain process before I even go to script. But because of that, 9 out of 18 times the network shot my first draft. They greenlit it. And I put a ton of work into that. So if you do all the rewriting before you start putting in dialogue and the action and everything else, you can see the problems better. And I believe in really triaging a project before you start, because, I mean, so many people are saying, well, I've written 32 scripts, I'm ready to go. Write one good one.
Yeah.
It's not volume.
And workshop.
Well,
all right. Of the 18 children, tell me about one. Tell me one of them that rises to the top of your brain. That you just,
Well, I will tell you about 2.
2 is good.
Because the first one I was really proud of, because I had done it all by myself. And this was way back in 1980, when we didn't have a lot of books. There was Laios Agri on playwriting and the art of dramatic writing. And basically, there was no internet, there were no networking groups, there were no classes, there was none of that. You had to actually get to people to read the script. And on my first assignment, it was a show called Foul Play. And my first episode, the note that came down after my first draft was, this is really good, so we got a better actress, make her part bigger and put her in more scenes. And that's when I felt like, okay, I'm supposed to be doing this. Probably the episode that was some kind of an accomplishment was something that I felt had never been done before. You don't talk about spousal abuse in terms of the bad guy being a cop. But we put these people out on the street or in the military, and we train them to be ready to kill. And they come home with all of this frustration and pent-up anger. They chase, they shoot out, they get somebody in custody, and the guy gets off on a technicality, and he's back out on the street. And I am not in any way justifying this, but there is a large percentage of spousal abuse that comes from cops, and these guys have guns. And so I really wanted to explore what happens to that woman. And on Jake and the Fat Man, that's what we did.
You remember that show, Jake and the Fat Man? I remember that show. That's one. What's the other one?
Well, the other one was Foul Play, the first one.
Okay.
Which was the proving ground to me. Because, it's kind of like you do something and you go, I don't really know anything. So am I good at this? And when Paramount said, okay.
Oh, yeah. That's when they expanded the character.
Yeah.
Have you seen anything in the last little while, year or so, that you just sat there and go, oh, that's good writing? Anything that's really, you just give an A+ to?
There's a lot of good writing. I think the first season of Goliath was just remarkable. I think that Big Little Lies was remarkable. And both of those were David E. Kelley, who is a genius. I mean, I would follow this guy around and just watch and listen if I had the opportunity. I think there's a lot of really good shows. This may say way too much about me. One of my favorite things is every week watching Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, which is scripted, but it's in the vein of comedy news and whatever. And, I mean, that just makes me giggle.
Right.
I think the drama of the first few seasons of House of Cards was brilliant. That was Beau Willimon.
Yeah.
And you look at writers who create something like that. That was based on a British series. And a bunch of people said, oh, did you see the original? So I hunted it down on Netflix. I think it was Netflix had it. And I watched the 4 episodes and I was like, yeah, this is like nothing. This is the demonstration that Beau Willimon is amazing.
Wow.
Some sitcoms are terrific. I mean, for example, you take something like 2.5 Men, which is misogynistic and everything else, but it was so over the top it was funny. The people who created and ran that show have the genius of doing the same thing over and over 200 times and making it different every time. So that's the kind of thing that draws me in. There's a number of shows I don't like that I'm not going to name. And there's a number of shows that I'm sure I'm going to get off this microphone and go, oh, I forgot to talk about that one.
Right.
But I'm really intrigued now by the return of what we used to call a miniseries, and now they call a limited series.
Me too.
And I don't think Goliath held up as much in the second season. It was still good, but it got really, really dark. And I think that sometimes the solution for problem solving on a script is go dark and get gross.
Right.
I always choose not to do that.
It's almost, yeah. Well, we like to find ways to, I would personally, I guess, I don't want to speak for you, but to find ways to inspire writers to be the best they can be, to workshop their scripts, to take the hard red pen to it that Catherine Clinch would do in order to respect their audiences and be innovative and creative and inspiring and tell new stories. And my thing is you just don't have to put the poison in. We just don't have to pollute people.
If you can't tell a good story without sex, violence, and profanity, you can't tell a good story. And there's 2 things that I suggest people do. The first is do stand-up comedy. Because when you are standing in front of an audience of people who may or may not have exceeded the 2-drink minimum, you learn really fast, are you funny or not? The second thing is get somebody who doesn't like you to read your script. Because they're going to be totally honest with you. You get your best friend, they're going to go, oh, I love it. It was so great. I love you.
Which we need sometimes, by the way, but it's not honest.
We all need cheerleaders. That's great.
Yes.
But we need somebody who will look at it and go, you totally lost me by page 35. And the bottom line right now is you have 3 seconds to get people's attention. How do you do that in a 120-page script? The opening image is crucial. The opening moment. Who are we looking at? What do we see? And so many people say, oh, but it gets really good at page 40. No one's going to read it till page 40. No one's going to stay in the theater until then.
This is just me, but I love the phrase, curtain up trouble. And I feel bored if they make me wait around while the person just opens the door and gets in the car and does something close up with their fingers. I mean, I'm already checked out. I have a low time of attention that I'm going to give you.
Okay, so on 2 separate occasions, I wrote for the same soap opera. And the problem I have with soap operas is you start in the middle, then you go to the middle, then you end in the middle, and you cut to commercial, where you come back and you recap the middle, and then you go to the middle. It's exhausting. You're in the door, you're doing this, it's click, click, click. And that's why I like action adventure. But I don't like to just randomly start killing people in a script. I like to see people be challenged by an adventure.
Yeah.
And I think that the Christian community needs more comedy. I think God has a sense of humor, because if we are made in His image and we have a sense of humor, surely He enjoys a good laugh from time to time.
Amen, sister. Last year I came here, I came away with the same thought. I don't know, you probably didn't see it, but the Sheeps debuted last night, and they were there, and so I thought they would make us laugh. They're funny, they make people laugh. I've got a comedy that I really want to do this year, Holiday Dracula. I want to laugh more. We're supposed to be joyful. We're supposed to be known by our joyfulness.
And we're supposed to tell stories that are suitable for Christians that don't constantly hammer them over the head. The first animation I've ever written was a feature film about a rebellious teenage chameleon who doesn't want to blend in. He wants to celebrate color like he believes the Creator intended. And he lives in a community of chameleons who are protected by a butterfly preserve. And yet when the little girl said that he says, "Do you believe in butterflies?" He goes, "Do you?" Because he doesn't even want to imagine that someone else has control over his life. And he has to find his way home when he gets separated by learning to believe in butterflies. And that's a very simple way of introducing children to the concept of angels. Okay? Although I was raised Catholic, so we don't have chameleons go to heaven. So, it's like you're not going to talk about the angels protecting the chameleons, although we do have the designated hitter of St. Francis.
It's good to have a DH. You have said, write what you are passionate about, and
Yeah.
Why do you say that?
Because if you don't care about it, I'm not going to care about it. And when you write what you're excited about, your writing skills are going to come out better. And you're going to have a better experience in the process. You should never write what you know. It's one of the worst pieces of advice that I've ever gotten, that I've ever heard people get. Because I know a lot of things, but so what? And on a certain level, you should write what the market is buying. But not if it doesn't excite you. If all the market is buying right now is science fiction, I'm going to sit out a season or two because I'm just not interested in science fiction. So you really have to write what matters to you. What do you want to tell the world? What experience do you want to share with the world? And why should I care? Tell me why you care, and then I'll understand why I should care.
This is Catherine Clinch, writer and speaker and teacher, and this has been an interesting podcast. And I hope that if you're listening to this and you've had encouragement or you've felt the spark of inspiration, that maybe you have a voice. I'm not going to speak for Catherine, but I hope that as you explore that and work on it, that this encourages you. If you're going to do it well. Do it well. Read the books. Come to the seminars. I'm not saying that I'm Bo Williamson, but I've gotten a lot better at writing thanks to the writing coaches, including you, who challenged me. And I know it's making a difference because now when I see my own mistakes on the screen from somebody else, I'm going, I can't take it anymore. You can learn the craft. You can learn the craft. And if you have talent that can go alongside that learnedness, you'll be a storyteller.
Absolutely.
Thanks for being on the No Shame podcast.
Thanks for having me.
That's it. This is John Groders at ICVM with Catherine Clinch.
Have no shame, no, we are not afraid. No shame of the gospel of His name. It's the power of God by which we all are saved. We need not be afraid. No shame of the gospel of His name. It's same.